Excuse me, this is my seat. You need to move. Heads turned. First class wasn't used to shouting matches, but this one bloomed fast. The black woman sitting in 2A didn't stir. Her posture was straight, her navy blazer crisp, her boarding pass resting on the armrest like evidence already submitted. The barcode had been scanned moments ago, and 2A was printed in bold black letters. Her name was Celine Carter, 40th CEO of Orion Air, the very airline whose logo glimmered on the headrest. She didn't announce that, though. She simply lifted her gaze, calm, and said, "Check your ticket." The white woman huffed, waving her pass dramatically. 2A, window seat, mine. A flight attendant hurried over, voice low and strained. "Ma'am, please, let me take a look." The pass was snatched, scanned, and rejected with a red beep. The attendant frowned. "Your ticket is for 12A, economy." Gasps flickered across the cabin. Someone chuckled nervously. Another whispered, "Yikes." But the woman refused to wilt. She leaned in, eyes narrowing at Celine. "She doesn't belong here. Look at her. Probably upgraded herself with points. People like me," she gestured to her pearl necklace, "belong in first class." Phones tilted up, recording. Celine didn't flinch. She adjusted her cufflink, voice even. "I belong exactly where my ticket says I do." The captain appeared, alerted by murmurs. He looked from Celine to the irate passenger, weighing authority against inconvenience. "Ladies, we need cooperation, perhaps a compromise." "No," the woman cut in. "I will not sit in coach." Celine placed her boarding pass flat on the tray, her calm like storm air before lightning. "Neither will I. And if we're still debating this in 10 minutes, Captain, this aircraft won't leave the ground." Celine Carter wasn't new to arrogance. She had spent 2 decades in boardrooms where men underestimated her, only to later read her signature on the contracts that decided their futures. But on her airplanes, she always expected quiet. Order, a small sanctuary in the sky. That day proved otherwise. Born in Atlanta, raised by a school teacher mother and a mechanic father, Celine had built her empire from grit and relentless discipline. By 42, she was the CEO of Orion Air, the second largest airline in the country. She wore her authority like she wore her tailored blazer, precisely, without apology, yet in public she never announced it. "Let people show themselves first," her father used to say. And the woman in the aisle of Flight 417 had shown herself within seconds. The seat dispute should have ended quickly. A ticket scan, a shrug, a shuffle down the aisle. Instead, it ignited into spectacle. Phones raised, passengers whispering, the captain caught between convenience and conscience. Celine had seen this kind of arrogance before, the confidence of someone who believed the world bent in their direction. What the woman didn't know, and what Celine had no intention of revealing until the right moment, was that the world she was trying to bend already belonged to Celine. Her calm wasn't weakness, it was timing. She let the woman's words stretch higher, let the captain's hesitation weigh heavier, let the audience lean further forward. Every second added pressure, like altitude building before turbulence. And when the moment came when arrogance reached its loudest peak, Celine would flip it, one reveal, one calm truth, and the entire cabin would see who really owned the sky. Boarding should have been finished in 3 minutes, but the aisle had turned into a bottleneck of stares and whispered commentary. The woman with the pearl necklace, Whitfield, stood rigid beside 2A, her tote bag jammed against the armrest like a territorial flag. "You heard me?" she said, chin lifted. "This is my seat." Celine Carter set her boarding pass on the tray table, the bold 2A facing up, the barcode still warm from the scan. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Your ticket reads 12A, she replied evenly. "Different row, different cabin." Gasps slipped through first class. A businessman stifled a grin behind his hand. A teenager angled her phone, no longer hiding that she was recording. Flight attendant Jenna pressed a hand to her headset, eyes darting between the women. "Ma'am," she said to Whitfield, "let me help you find your seat." "I will not move to coach," Whitfield snapped. If she wants to play make-believe in first, she can switch with me. It's not like she belongs here. Celine's right brow ticked barely. She adjusted her cufflink, the only movement she allowed. Inside, she was already calculating 10 minutes to push back, 7 before the door must close, 5 before the crew would look for the fastest solution. Arrogance always believes the clock is on its side. The captain arrived, impatience in every line of his posture. "Ladies," he said, "we need cooperation. Perhaps, Miss Carter, you could accommodate just for this leg." Jenna paled. A ripple ran through the cabin. Celine met the captain's gaze, calm as unbroken water. "The manifest is correct. So is my boarding pass. If policy is optional today, say it clearly. I want the recording to have clean audio." Phones rose higher. Whitfield folded her arms, seizing the moment. "See? She's difficult. Remove her." "Ma'am." Jenna tried again. 12A is... "I bought an upgrade," Whitfield interrupted. Bluff thick with entitlement. "Check again. Or call your supervisor." Celine exhaled through her nose and slid her phone to the armrest's edge. The lock screen glowed for a second with the Orion Air crest before it dimmed. She didn't show it yet. She wanted the cameras to catch every misplaced word first. "Captain," she said, "operations can confirm the cabin inventory. And while they're on, have them note that you requested a displacement against a verified first passenger. It will help later." The captain's jaw clenched. He glanced at Jenna, at the impatient queue stretching toward row 20, at Whitfield's theatric. He weighed one woman's calm against another's noise, and nearly made the oldest mistake in customer service, rewarding volume. "We're on a delay," he muttered. "If we don't depart, we lose our slot." "Then don't trade policy for speed," Celine replied. "A minute saved now costs hours later." Someone whispered. "She sounds like she runs the place." Nervous laughter followed. Jenna's tablet chimed. She read, frowned, then said, "No upgrade was purchased. 12A remains assigned. Whitfield, we can reseat you in Economy Plus." Whitfield's smile sharpened. "I don't sit behind a curtain." Celine folded her hands, patient but unyielding. She had given the process every chance to correct itself. The next correction would be her. "Captain," she said softly, knowing the microphones would catch it, "we have 4 minutes to door closure. If you force a displacement, I will contact Ops Control directly. If I do, this aircraft will remain at gate until the matter is corrected by policy, not preference." The captain stared. He didn't understand the scope, but someone would very soon. The tension in the cabin thickened like humidity before a storm. Passengers leaned over armrests, pretending to adjust headphones while capturing video. Every word, every glare was now evidence. Whitfield refused to back down. She shoved her tote bag harder against the armrest, sneering at Celine. "This is outrageous. I'm a paying customer. I deserve first class." "You deserve the seat your ticket purchased," Celine replied evenly. Her voice didn't climb. It pressed down, calm but weighted. The captain rubbed his temples, impatience sharp in his sigh. "We can't spend all day arguing. Security will remove someone if this continues." Whitfield's smirk widened. She thought she had him. She angled toward the passengers like an actress playing to her audience. "Hear that? She's being difficult. Security will deal with her." Phones zoomed in. A businessman whispered, "This is gonna blow up online." Jenna's tablet chimed again. A message from ground staff. She hesitated, then said carefully, "Captain, Ops confirms 2A is Miss Carter's seat. 12A is Ms. Whitfield's. No changes recorded." The captain's jaw worked, but before he could respond, Whitfield barked, "I don't care what Ops says. I upgraded." Celine adjusted her watch, the Orion Air logo flashing briefly before the screen dimmed again. The cameras caught it, but no one understood yet. Timing was everything. "Captain," she said, "you've been given the facts. Continuing to debate is a choice, one with consequences." Her words landed heavy. A ripple of murmurs spread. The captain stiffened. "Ma'am, you're threatening the operation of this flight." Celine leaned back, crossing her legs. "No, I'm describing it. You're the one threatening it by ignoring your own manifest." Whitfield clutched at the captain's sleeve, her tone dripping with false sweetness. Don't let her intimidate you. People like that always think they're owed something. The phrase people like that crackled through the cabin like static. Gasps erupted. Someone hissed. Did she really just say that? A teenager whispered to her friend. She's done. Celine remained still. Inside, her pulse ticked steady, measured. She had endured arrogance her entire career. But this was different. This was public, undeniable, recorded. Jenna stepped forward, voice firmer now. Ms. Whitfield, please take your assigned seat, or we'll have to deplane you. Whitfield scoffed. You wouldn't dare. Ops Control's voice crackled faintly through the captain's headset, audible to those nearby. Captain, resolve immediately. Passenger manifest is final. Delay will escalate penalties. He winced, caught between arrogance and authority. Celine slid her phone forward, unlocking it with a quiet tap. The Orion Air crest pulsed across the screen, glowing unmistakable. She didn't speak. She let the captain see it, let the nearest phones catch the reflection. His eyes widened. He understood partially, not the full scope, but enough to hesitate, enough to pale. Whitfield noticed his change and snapped, "What? What is it?" The captain didn't answer. His silence told the cabin everything. Celine finally spoke, her voice low but clear. 3 minutes remain to departure cutoff. Captain, if Ops Control does not confirm policy adherence, I will escalate. When I do, this flight won't move. Not tonight, not until the error is corrected. The businessman in row 3 muttered. She's not bluffing. The cabin buzzed like live wire. Passengers shifted, caught between discomfort and awe. Whitfield's smirk faltered, but pride held her upright. You're all being ridiculous. I'm not moving. Celine's eyes never left the captain. Then neither does this aircraft. 2 minutes remained until departure cut off, and the cabin felt like a theater waiting for its climax. Every passenger leaned forward, phones tilted, eyes fixed on the silent war in row 2. Whitfield's defiance only sharpened. I'm not moving to coach. I paid good money, and I won't be shoved to the back just because She stopped, but the venom in her pause was louder than words. Jenna straightened, professionalism hardening into resolve. Ma'am, refusal to take your assigned seat constitutes interference with the crew. That's a federal violation. Whitfield laughed, brittle. Oh, please, what are you going to do? Arrest me for wanting the seat I deserve? Celine finally shifted. She picked up her phone, tapped once, and the Orion Air crest lit the screen. This time she angled it so the cameras caught it, the glow unmistakable. A ripple surged through the passengers. Someone whispered, "That's the airline logo?" Another gasped, "Wait, is she?" The captain stiffened. His headset buzzed with Ops Control again, louder this time. "Captain, confirm resolution. If policy isn't followed, the flight is grounded." Whitfield's smile wavered. She tugged at the captain's sleeve again. "You can't listen to her. She's bluffing. She doesn't belong here." Celine's voice was calm thunder. "Captain, this is your final decision point. You either uphold manifest policy, or operations will freeze this aircraft. Choose." Phones caught every syllable. The passengers could feel it. The shift, the weight of her words. This wasn't a threat. It was a fact. The captain swallowed hard, looking between Celine Whitfield and the sea of recording phones. His authority wavered like a candle in wind. Jenna spoke again, firmer now. "Ms. Whitfield, gather your belongings. You'll be reseated in your assigned row." Gasps, murmurs, and scattered applause followed. Whitfield's face reddened, fury boiling over. "This is discrimination. I'll sue. I'll ruin this airline." Celine leaned back, folding her arms, every inch the composed executive. "You can try," she said softly, "but you'll find your case difficult when the airline is mine." A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. The words weren't shouted. They weren't grandiose. They were delivered with surgical precision. Calm. Final. Whitfield's jaw dropped. "What?" Celine didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. The crest on her phone glowed again as she tapped the screen, sending a single message. Seconds later, the captain's headset buzzed. "Ops Control. Flight 417 is on hold pending executive directive. Silence slammed down like a gavel. Whitfield staggered back, clutching her tote bag like a shield. The cabin knew the truth now. Arrogance hadn't challenged a passenger. She'd challenged the owner. Security arrived moments later, summoned by ops. They stepped into the cabin, eyes scanned. Jenna pointed discreetly toward Whitfield. Row 2. Passenger refusing to comply. The officers approached. "Ma'am, gather your belongings. You're being removed." Whitfield sputtered, rage unraveling into desperation. "You can't do this. I'm entitled." "Not here, you're not," Celine said calmly. Phones caught every second as Whitfield was escorted out, her protests shrinking into the jet bridge. The door shut behind her with a final thud. The cabin exhaled, relief, awe, vindication all rolled together. Passengers clapped, some hesitant, others boldly. A teenager whispered, "She just shut down the whole plane." Celine retrieved her boarding pass, smoothed the corner and tucked it into her blazer pocket. She turned to Jenna. "Now, let's fly." The cabin was still humming with shock when Celine Carter leaned forward, unlocking her phone with a quiet swipe. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't posture, she simply tapped once, and the Orion Air crest expanded across her screen in bright silver and navy. The captain froze. He knew that logo intimately. Everyone who wore his uniform did. He cleared his throat, suddenly unsure of his footing. "Miss Carter?" Celine finally gave him her eyes. Calm, steady. "Yes, that Carter, CEO of Orion Air." The words landed like thunder in a clear sky. Passengers gasped. Phones trembled in recording hands. Someone whispered, "She owns this airline?" Another muttered, "No way." Whitfield blinked in disbelief, her smirk collapsing. "You're lying. This is some scam. If you were really who you say you are, you wouldn't be sitting here." Celine tilted her head, almost amused. "Why wouldn't I?" The question silenced the cabin. It wasn't a defense, it was a challenge. She turned her gaze back to the captain. "Operations has already received my directive. This aircraft will remain at gate until compliance is confirmed. And if you believe otherwise, I encourage you to escalate straight to my desk." Ops control buzzed again through his headset, their tone sharper now. "Captain, confirm compliance with CEO Carter. Repeat, compliance mandatory." The captain's face drained of color. His authority, once solid, was dissolving in front of 200 witnesses. Whitfield sputtered, "This is insane. She's bluffing." "People like her." Celine's hand rose slightly, silencing the aisle without effort. "People like me sign your pilot contracts. People like me approve your fleet budgets. People like me determine whether this airline thrives or fails. So yes, people like me belong in two." The cabin erupted, some clapping, some gasping, some too stunned to move. Celine didn't bask. She simply leaned back, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Timing had delivered its verdict. Whitfield's face had drained of its smug color, but pride wouldn't let her yield. She clutched her tote bag tighter, knuckles white. "This doesn't prove anything," she snapped. "Anyone could flash a logo on a phone. If you really owned this airline, you wouldn't be sitting next to me. You'd have a private jet." A low chuckle rippled through the cabin, not from Celine but from the passengers. They weren't laughing with Whitfield, they were laughing at her. Celine didn't flinch. "Ownership doesn't mean isolation. It means accountability. And I prefer to sit with the people who keep this airline alive." A businessman in row 3 clapped softly. Someone else murmured, "That's leadership." Phones tilted closer, capturing every word. The captain, sweating now, tried to salvage authority. "Miss Carter, with respect, perhaps we could resolve this quietly, without further disruption." Celine's eyes flicked toward him, steady as stone. The disruption began when protocol was ignored. Don't confuse correction with chaos. Jenna, the flight attendant, nodded quickly, her spine straighter now. "She's right, Captain. Manifest is law. If we bend it for noise, we'll drown in it." Passengers murmured their agreement. The tide was shifting. Celine's calm had become the gravity in the room. Whitfield's voice grew shriller. You're all brainwashed. Do you really believe this woman controls an airline? She's just pretending, trying to humiliate me. Celine finally turned her full gaze on Whitfield. The silence was sharp enough to cut glass. Humiliation isn't given, it's chosen. You've written every word of this scene yourself. The woman blinked rapidly, but her pride fought to stay afloat. I'll sue. I'll take this whole company down. Celine's lips curved faintly. You're welcome to try. I'll see you in court, and so will the thousands watching this video once it hits the news cycle. The teenager with her phone grinned. Already live streaming. Laughter broke out, nervous but undeniable. Whitfield's composure cracked. Her shoulders hunched. Her voice wavered. This isn't fair. I paid for exactly what your ticket says. Celine interrupted, her tone precise, mercilessly calm. 12A. Nothing more. Entitlement doesn't upgrade you. Ops control chimed again, firm and final. Captain, compliance required immediately. Passenger in violation must be removed. The captain sagged in defeat. He turned towards security officers who had been waiting by the galley. Proceed. Whitfield's eyes went wide. No, you can't do this. She's lying. I know she's lying. But the cabin no longer believed her. The tide had shifted completely. Celine adjusted her blazer, her expression unchanging. Arrogance is loud. Authority is quiet. Which one just grounded this plane? The cabin doors hadn't closed, but the atmosphere already felt sealed. Every eye tracked the security officers as they stepped down the aisle, shoulders squared, their presence cutting through the last threads of Whitfield's bravado. Ma'am, one officer said evenly, you've been asked to comply with your assigned seat. You've refused. You'll need to gather your belongings and deplane. Whitfield clutched her tote bag like a lifeline. This is discrimination. I'll file complaints. All the officer's tone stayed steady. You'll have that opportunity. But first, you need to leave. Passengers watched silently, their judgment thick in the recycled air. Some leaned into the aisle for a better angle with their phones. The woman who had strutted so proudly minutes ago now looked small, cornered by her own arrogance. Celine didn't move, she didn't gloat. She simply observed, her expression unreadable, as if she'd seen this pattern 1,000 times. Pride ballooned. Arrogance blinded. Consequences arrived. Whitfield turned, searching desperately for allies. You all saw it. She was threatening. But the cabin didn't rally. No one defended her. Instead, murmurs spread. She dug her own grave. Unbelievable entitlement. A man in row 4 shook his head. She tried to steal a CEO's seat. The irony hung heavy, undeniable. Finally, Whitfield sagged. The officers gestured, and she stumbled into motion, muttering curses under her breath. As she shuffled past Celine, her eyes burned with fury. This isn't over. Celine met her gaze briefly, cool as stone. For you it is. The cabin erupted in applause as Whitfield disappeared into the jet bridge. Her protests cut off by the closing door. Relief rippled through the rows like oxygen after suffocation. The captain cleared his throat, flustered. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll resume preparations for departure. But the power dynamic had shifted permanently. Everyone knew who had really commanded the cabin. Not the shouting passenger. Not even the captain. It was the woman in 2A, composed and unshaken. Jenna approached quietly, her voice low, almost reverent. Miss Carter, thank you for handling this. Celine inclined her head slightly. Protocol handled it. I just ensured it wasn't ignored. The teenager across the aisle whispered to her friend. She just grounded a whole plane with one phone. The friend whispered back. Not a phone, an empire. Celine leaned back, crossing one leg, her calmness restored. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the tarmac gold. Inside, the cabin buzzed with the kind of story that would live online for weeks. But Celine wasn't thinking about hashtags or headlines. For her, this wasn't spectacle. It was correction. A reminder that arrogance, no matter how loud, always crashes against truth. She closed her phone, the Orion air crest fading into black. The show was over. The lesson remained. The moment Whitfield vanished through the jet bridge, the cabin shifted like a pressure valve releasing. Conversation sparked in whispers, then grew bolder. The applause, hesitant at first, swelled until it echoed against the overhead bins. Passengers weren't clapping just because the disruption was over. They were clapping because arrogance had been checked and they'd all witnessed the reckoning. Celine didn't bask in it. She adjusted her blazer, placed her boarding pass back in her pocket, and closed her eyes briefly, as if sealing the chapter with one steady breath. Jenna leaned in quietly. "Miss Carter, I am sorry. I should have handled it sooner." Celine opened her eyes, gaze softening. "Correction matters more than apology. You stood your ground in the end." The words seemed to lift Jenna's shoulders. A moment of mentorship hidden in a reprimand, but it landed with grace. Across the aisle, the teenager who had been live streaming grinned. "Ma'am, the video's already blowing up. Half the internet's gonna know before we take off." Celine only raised one brow. "Then let them." The captain returned, his voice low, almost deferential now. "Ops Control confirmed clearance. We'll be departing shortly." His earlier impatience had melted into something else, respect mixed with unease. Authority bent in real time. As boarding completed, a businessman leaned over his tray. "Never seen anyone handle arrogance that cleanly," he murmured. Another passenger chimed in. She didn't even raise her voice. Celine remained still, letting the chatter ripple. She knew the story was no longer hers to narrate. It belonged to every phone, every whisper, every person who would retell it later. When the safety briefing began, the cabin listened with unusual focus, as if discipline itself had been restored. The hum of engines returned, steady and sure. For the first time since the standoff began, the flight felt like it belonged to the air again. Yet beneath the calm, the fallout had only begun. By the time they landed, Whitfield's tantrum and Celine's reveal would already be trending, dissected, memed, and shared across the world. Celine didn't fear that storm. She had weathered bigger ones. She leaned back, the faintest smile ghosting her lips. By the time Flight 417 touched down, the world outside already knew what had happened inside. The teenager's live stream had gone viral before the plane left the ground, clipped and shared across every platform with captions that burned. "Passenger refuses seat, then learns she picked a fight with the CEO herself." When Celine stepped off the aircraft, her phone buzzed endlessly with notifications, articles, tags, and messages from her comms team. She ignored them for the moment. The story would move on its own. It didn't need her hands steering it. Whitfield, however, wasn't so fortunate. Within hours, her name was trending alongside words like entitlement, racism, and kicked off flight. Videos captured her shrieking at the crew, her face twisted in fury, contrasted with Celine's calm posture. The comparison was brutal, undeniable. Reporters dug fast. By the next morning, Whitfield's employer released a statement. "We do not condone the behavior exhibited by our employee. She has been placed on immediate leave pending review." Neighbors were interviewed, some sympathetic, most shaking their heads. "Always thought she acted better than everyone," one said. Meanwhile, Celine's inbox overflowed with praise. Passengers sent thank you messages. Advocacy groups asked to share the footage as an example of dignity under fire. Even competitors, executives from other airlines sent quiet texts. "Masterful handling. Respect." Celine answered few. She didn't need validation. She'd done what was necessary, upheld order, exposed arrogance, reminded everyone that leadership isn't noise. Still, the ripple effects fascinated her. In boardrooms and online forums, people debated what the incident revealed about privilege, about authority, about how quickly arrogance unravels when faced with quiet certainty. At Orion Air headquarters, her comms team asked if she wanted to release a formal statement. Celine shook her head. "The footage speaks louder than anything I could write. Let the truth breathe." Behind closed doors, the airline's board praised her restraint. Investors, initially nervous about the headlines, relaxed when they saw stock climbing. Public respect translated into confidence, and confidence into numbers. Whitfield tried to salvage her image with a shaky video apology. "I was stressed. I didn't mean." But the internet wasn't forgiving. Comment sections filled with responses. Stress doesn't excuse hate. You picked the wrong seat and the wrong person. The world had rendered its verdict, and there was no appeal. Celine sat in her office one evening, skyline glowing through the window. She watched one clip again, not for vanity but for clarity. There she was, seated calmly while chaos raged around her, unshaken as the storm broke itself on her silence. Her father's words echoed, "Let people show themselves first," and Whitfield had shown herself to millions. Celine closed the video, her reflection staring back from the dark screen. She didn't smile. This wasn't triumph. It was correction, and correction was always necessary. In the days that followed, the storm raged online, but Celine moved through her routines with steady precision. She rose at dawn, ran 3 miles, reviewed reports, and walked into Orion Air headquarters as though nothing unusual had happened. To her, the confrontation had been a single evening. To the world, it had become a saga. Employees greeted her differently now, not with fear, but with a sharpened respect. One young analyst stopped her in the hallway. "Miss Carter, I just wanted to say I showed that video to my daughter," she said. "That's what power looks like." "Thank you." Celine inclined her head, offering the faintest smile. Power is staying calm when others lose control. Board members congratulated her, couching their words in language about public relations victories and brand stability. But Celine brushed those aside. This wasn't about brand, it was about principle. At home, in the quiet of her penthouse, overlooking the city, she finally allowed herself to reflect. She poured tea, sat by the window, and wrote in her leather journal, a habit she'd kept since her 20s. Her pen scratched across the page, "Arrogance collapses fastest when it believes it can't be challenged." The incident was already fading into headlines, but its ripples lingered in unexpected places. Advocacy groups cited it in op-ed. University professors dissected it in lectures about leadership. Even passengers from Flight 417 wrote letters describing how witnessing her calm had changed the way they thought about authority. And Whitfield, she retreated into silence. Her lawsuit threats evaporated. Her employer replaced her. The last Celine heard, she had left the city altogether. Entitlement thrives on an audience, but after that flight, hers had vanished. One evening, Celine attended a charity gala. Cameras flashed as she stepped onto the red carpet. A reporter leaned forward, mic extended. "Miss Carter, how does it feel to have put arrogance in its place?" Celine paused, then answered quietly, "Correction isn't about winning. It's about reminding people what the rules were all along." The quote traveled just as quickly as the original footage. Back in her office the next morning, Celine sat before her team. "Let this be the lesson," she told them. "We don't raise our voices to be heard. We hold our ground so no one forgets where it stands." They nodded, some scribbling notes, others just watching her with quiet admiration. That evening, she returned to her journal. She wrote only one line before closing it. "Peace isn't the absence of arrogance, it's the knowledge that arrogance can't move you." She blew out the candle on her desk, the city lights glowing outside. The chaos eventually ebbed. Headlines moved on, the internet found new spectacles, and passengers from Flight 417 resumed their lives. Yet for Celine, the echoes lingered in quieter ways during early morning runs, late-night journaling, and those still moments between meetings when memory drifted back to the woman in pearls and the seat that was never hers. Celine replayed the confrontation in fragments, not for vanity, never that, but to study it like a pilot studying turbulence reports. Where arrogance rises, how authority responds, what the cabin air does when fear and indignation clash. She wanted to understand, not because she doubted her choices, but because understanding kept her sharp. Her therapist once told her, "Power attracts challenge. The question isn't if, but when. The answer is how you stand when it comes." Flight 417 had been another when, and she had stood. Still, Celine admitted to herself that it hadn't been easy. There had been a moment, brief but real, when the captain's hesitation had stung. A reminder that even her own house, her airline, wasn't immune to the reflex of doubting her authority. The arrogance of Whitfield had been expected. The wavering of her own crew that had cut deeper. She addressed it quietly in leadership meetings, not as reprimand, but as a teaching moment. Protocol protects everyone, she told her managers. When we bend it for noise, we betray the silent majority following the rules. She didn't mention Flight 417 directly. She didn't need to. The lesson was clear. At night, Celine sat by her window overlooking the skyline, pen scratching across her journal. Arrogance believes it owns the sky. Dignity doesn't argue, it waits for the storm to exhaust itself. Those words weren't just reflection, they were balm. Proof that she hadn't been shaken. Proof that silence had been her strongest weapon. And yet, beneath the calm, there was a flicker of something softer sorrow. Not for Whitfield, but for the endless parade of arrogance Celine had faced her entire career. How many more storms would come? How many more times would she need to stand, steady and unflinching, while the world doubted her right to exist in the very seat she'd earned? The thought didn't make her bitter. It made her resolute. As weeks passed, Celine realized Flight 417 had become more than a viral moment. It was being retold in classrooms, in offices, in households where parents showed their children what dignity under fire looked like. People didn't just see a CEO, they saw possibility, proof that calm could disarm arrogance without theatrics. At a leadership summit 2 weeks later, Celine delivered a keynote that had been planned months in advance. Originally, her speech was about efficiency in aviation logistics, but when she stepped onto the stage, thousands of faces staring back at her, she pivoted. Leadership, she began, isn't about titles or uniforms. It's about choices. On a flight, in a boardroom, or in your own home, you'll face arrogance. You'll face people who believe noise equals authority. And you'll have two choices: meet their volume or meet their eyes. I recommend the latter. The crowd erupted in applause, many already aware of what she'd endured. Some stood. Cameras captured her words, and within hours the clip joined the constellation of Flight 417 footage already orbiting online. Back at headquarters, younger employees approached her with fresh pride. "I used to think I couldn't belong here," one intern admitted. "But after seeing you hold that cabin, I know I can." Another confided, "My parents told me to watch the video every time I doubt myself." Celine accepted their gratitude with grace, but always redirected. "It wasn't about me," she said. "It was about principle. Anyone can stand for that." Still, she knew the truth. Representation mattered. Seeing a black woman in power, calm and immovable, shook assumptions to their core. It wasn't just about seats on planes. It was about seats at tables everywhere. Community leaders reached out to churches, nonprofits, advocacy groups, invited her to speak. She declined most, preferring to let her actions resonate without but she donated quietly to programs supporting young women in leadership, scholarships for aspiring black pilots, and community projects that built opportunities instead of barriers. She wanted the lesson of Flight 417 to outlive the headline. Not a story of arrogance humiliated, but of dignity defended. In quieter moments, Celine thought about legacy. Not wealth, not titles, but memory. What would she leave behind? The answer, she realized, was clarity. A model of what it looked like to face arrogance without letting it twist you, to lead without raising your voice, to own an empire without needing to announce it. Months later, the frenzy of Flight 417 had cooled into memory, but its impact lingered. Celine no longer walked through airports unnoticed. Passengers recognized her, sometimes whispering, sometimes approaching with cautious gratitude. One young woman stopped her near a gate and said, "I was on that flight. I'll never forget the way you stayed calm. It changed how I see myself." Celine thanked her, offered a brief smile, and continued on. She didn't crave recognition, but she accepted it as part of her role. Influence wasn't always chosen, it was carried. At home, she nurtured a quieter vision. her journal filled with reflections that blended strategy with philosophy. Strength is not noise. Strength is not spectacle. Strength is steady breath when others choke on chaos. She also began mentoring more directly. Once a month, she met with young professionals, pilots, analysts, students, who sought guidance. She didn't lecture. She listened. And when she spoke, her advice was simple. Know your seat. Protect it. Don't let anyone convince you it belongs to them. Her own family called often, reminding her how proud they were. Her mother said, "You're showing girls what I wish the world would have shown me." Her father added, "And you're proving I was right. Let people show themselves first. You just keep showing who you are." Celine felt their pride like fuel. The legacy of that flight became a quiet compass. When boardrooms grew tense, she remembered the cabin. When negotiations hit turbulence, she recalled the hush that followed her reveal. Every future decision was anchored by the knowledge that dignity always outlasts arrogance. She also imagined the future in softer tones, a family of her own someday, children who would grow up knowing her not as a headline but as a mother who never let arrogance dictate the terms of her life. Children who would inherit not just her name but her lesson: stand tall, speak steady, hold your seat. One evening, as the city lights glittered outside her penthouse, she lit a candle and whispered to herself, "It ends with me." The cycle of arrogance, the endless questioning of belonging, the noise of people who mistook entitlement for authority, all of it would break here, in her life, in her choices. She closed her journal, set her pen aside, and let the quiet fill the room. It wasn't silence born of fear anymore. It was silence born of peace.